What's up, y'all? Welcome back. I am really excited to talk about what I'm going to talk about today. You could probably hear it in my voice. Full disclaimer, you probably won't be all that interested, but I really wanted to talk about this in a longer form. So we're talking Pretty Little Liars today. So Pretty Little Liars is a TV show that came out in 2010. It ran from 2010 to 2017 based on a young adult series of the same name. And it was my favorite show. I watched this show religiously for 7 years. So invested. It ended horribly. The final episode of the series was the absolute worst. It couldn't have ended worse if they'd asked for worse. Like, it was just the worst way to tie it up. And there were still so many questions that didn't get answered. But I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to just binge watch and watch over and over and over again. Well, they have recently come out with a spin-off series. Now, they've tried 2 other spin-off series from Pretty Little Liars. They tried Ravenswood, they tried The Perfectionist. Neither of those lasted more than a season, and now they're trying again with Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. The difference between this new spinoff and the original series is that they're really not connected. Now, there's supposed to be some Easter eggs here and there, kind of bridging the two, but it's a completely different series, completely separate cast of characters, not connected at all. So it really is supposed to be, I guess, Pretty Little Liars for a new generation. That's more in line with the current wave of teenage television. Well, it premiered last night on HBOMax. They released the first 3 episodes of the series. I believe it's supposed to be 10 episodes in the season. And I binge watched them yesterday. And if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you saw kind of my initial thoughts on each episode. And I really wanted to expand and talk about it a little bit more. I encourage you stick with me. I know a lot of y'all love to hear me talk about culture and politics, and I love talking about that stuff too. But this is where my passion is, film and television. So let's kind of get into it. Let's go. Oh, I'm about to geek out. I can't wait. All right, so quick synopsis. What is Pretty Little Liars? We're talking about 2 completely separate series. We have Pretty Little Liars, which ran from 2010 to 2017, and the new Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, which we're just going to call Original Sin from here on out, which premiered yesterday on HBO Max. They released the first 3 seasons. The season will probably wrap up, I believe, sometime in late August. They're only doing 10 episodes this season. So the original series, Pretty Little Liars, was about 5 best friends, Allison, Spencer, Emily, Hannah, and Aria. And the series starts off with Allison, who is the queen bee of the friend group, like the center of attention, goes missing. The girls are hanging out, the last little sleepover before school starts, and the girls wake up and Allison's gone. And we jump ahead a year. They're juniors in high school. They've kind of went their separate ways. The group kind of fell apart because Allison was the glue that held them all together. Aria and her family went out of the country for a little bit, came back in town, and that's pretty much where we start. Aria's back in town. School's about to start. And the girls are seeing each other again. They're in the same class. And all of a sudden, they start getting texts and messages from someone named A. BTW, if you hear any kind of rumbling in the background, it's thunder. Because it's New Orleans, it's the afternoon, it's storming. So they start getting text messages from this person named A, and A seems to know all their secrets, things that only Allison would know. So they're wondering, is Allison back? Is she pranking them? And then they have these secrets that are so big in their own eyes that they can't even tell each other. And if they can't tell each other, they definitely can't tell an adult. Well, as it turns out, it's not from Allison because Allison's dead. They find Allison's body at the very end of the first episode. No, this isn't spoilers. I mean, you can literally watch this stuff for free on HBO Max. And so who is this A? Who is A? Who is this person who seems to know everything about them, their every move, who seems to be everywhere all at once? and is holding everything over their head, sending them on a wild goose chase. Because while they're dealing with their own family issues, they're dealing with this cyberbully, they're still trying to figure out what happened to their best friends. So nothing seems to be going in the right direction. We find out at the end of season 2 who A is. Then season 3 starts, and we have a brand new A who is worse than the first one. And this A is pretty much a secret for seasons 3, 4, 5, and the first half of 6. Middle of 6, we find out who this A is. And then the beginning of the second half of season 6, we get a new A. And so the second half of season 6 and all of season 7 is who they call Uber A. So all in all, 3 A's, and it's this person who seems to know all their secrets, who knows where they are at all times, who's just completely messing with them, and they're trying to figure out all these different things. And it was a great series up until the last episode. That last episode was just so bad. Like, that's how you end it? That's how you tie things up? Like, it was one of those things that was so out of left field, it didn't make sense. It's not like you could take what happened at the end of 7 and be like, oh my gosh, and look back on the first season and say, there was that clue, there was that clue, there was that clue. This is literally something like they came up with in the middle of season 6 and then said, this is how we're going to end it. So it was very frustrating, but I'm very loyal to Pretty Little Liars. And now we have Original Sin, which kind of milks off of that a little bit, but we're in a completely different town. The original Pretty Little Liars was set in Rosewood, Pennsylvania. This Pretty Little Liars is set in Millwood, Pennsylvania. And instead of these 4 best friends, we have 5 strangers. And what bound them together in the original was their dead friend, Allison. What binds these 5 together, what really brings them together, is a bully named Karen. Yeah, her name's Karen, blonde hair, blue-eyed Karen. And there's no chemistry between the 5, which I'm trying to chalk up to them being complete strangers up until this point. But we have 5 girls. Imogen, who is white and pregnant. I'm saying they're racist because that's going to matter later. Who's white and pregnant. We have Tabby, who is a movie buff and basically speaks in movie quotes. She's Black. We have Farron, who's also Black. She's a ballerina. We have Noah, who's Hispanic. She just got out of juvie and she's doing community service, has an ankle monitor. And then we have Mouse, who I believe is some kind of Asian, Southeast Asian. And she's all into computers and hacking and all that jazz. You know, complete opposites on all the different spectrums. They're so different from one another, which was very much like our first 4 girls. But the thing is, those first 4 girls, they had chemistry. Their friendship made sense. This is not making sense to me just yet. Basically, what's bound these 5 together is they were caught up in the same situation. They are convinced that this bully set them up to all get detention. And so they're realizing, oh, she set me up. She set you up too. She did that. Let's get her back. And so they get her back. And now there's something that happened with this bully, and they're kind of stuck together because of what happened. Not realizing that it wasn't the bully that set them up, but there's this person called A who's determined to just mess with them. And it all goes back to something that their mothers did when they were in high school. And that's where this original sin comes from. It's the sins of the mother passing down to the child. So I have a lot of feelings, and I really just kind of wanted to get into it, but that's pretty much the synopsis. I hope that was easy to follow. Probably not, because I could go in circles about Pretty Little Liars all freaking day. So there are 3 big things that I took issue with. 2 of them kind of tie together, so we'll just talk about those at once. And it's kind of a theme I'm seeing across film and television right now, where it's forced diversity, where they're forcing diversity in places where it may not be necessary. And then the definition of diversity is shifting a little bit, where diversity usually means we're seeing people of all shades, where now diversity seems to mean we're seeing as few white people as possible. I'm not against diversity in film or television. Don't get me wrong. I am, however, against diversity when it doesn't make any sense. So, talking about the original series, um, you had your four main girls, five if you count Allison, but we'll just stick to the main four. Three of them are white, and then one of them is Asian, which is Emily. We know she's Asian. We can see she's Asian. Her mother is some kind of not white. I think she's also Asian. And then her father is clearly Asian. So it could be that Emily is biracial, but we know that she is Asian. We only know she's Asian because we can see she's Asian. It's not something that's spoken about. There's not a big deal made out of it. The only time it really comes up is in an episode where she is thinking about applying to colleges because she can't swim anymore. So this would have been season 4. She hit her shoulder and she couldn't swim anymore. And so she was looking for alternative ways to go to college. And one guy brought up a scholarship and mentioned that, you know, she is Asian, a variety of different Asian. And that's it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. It's not essential or important to the story. And I'm starting to see that in some other Netflix shows. I think Bridgerton is one where they have characters who are not white, but them not being white isn't made a big deal. They're there and they're blending into the story just like everyone else is blending into the story. And it's on us to just accept that they belong there. I think of the Cinderella movie with Brandy from late 90s. You know, you had everyone was a different shade of something in that movie, which is nonsensical in the real world, but it's on us to just accept that Brandy's Black and these people who might be related to her are also white, and the prince is either Asian or Hispanic, and it's just supposed to just make sense. And we just accept it and we roll with it. That's cool. Or, you know, we're talking about a city where there's mixed diversity, so it makes sense to have a mixed cast of characters. Here's the thing. And I've seen different remarks about how this new reboot does something that the original didn't do, and that was diversity. There wasn't a whole lot of diversity. You did have Black characters, Asian characters. If there was a Hispanic character, I can't remember. You know, Emily's character is gay, and there were several different gay characters that came on and off. But here's the thing in terms of diversity and saying, it just wouldn't have made sense. This is supposed to be a rich upper class suburb of Philadelphia. You know, if I'm looking at upper class suburbs of Philadelphia, I think I would find that they're not equally diverse. And the thing about the original that we're not getting with this reboot is we are not getting a sense of the town. So this new one is set in Millwood, Pennsylvania, which I think they're trying to cast it off as a suburb of Pittsburgh. Just to kind of show the correlation, we're getting a suburb of Pittsburgh in the same way we had a suburb of Philly. And we're not getting a sense of what this town is like, just the overall culture of the town, the demographics of the town. Whereas with Rosewood, we got all of that, and we got all of that very early on. We got a very good look at what this town is like, what this town has to offer, you know, from the very beginning. This town of Millwood, Pennsylvania, doesn't have any character other than just a dark history, something that happened in the past that had to do with these girls' mothers. And so I think that is a good thing that they're doing, because if we were to get a good sense of what this town is like, the forced diversity, I call it diversity dumping, when they're just throwing in diversity for the sake of throwing it in. I think if we were to get a sense of what this town was like, the forced diversity just wouldn't make sense. I mean, even still, it just doesn't make sense. And you mean to tell me that this group of girls, only one of them is white? You have Bailey Madison's character Imogen, who is white, and then you have two black girls, a Hispanic girl, and an Asian girl, and these are the five girls, and only one of them is white. The only other white main character were two blonde twins. So they were kind of the adversaries in the first three episodes. And then every other white character in this show is also negative. You have the theater manager, who is predatory, the ballet teacher, who is just mean, and then your love interest are white. You have the ballet dude who's white, and then you have the coworker who's also white. I'm going to say it again. I'm not against diversity in film or television. I am against diversity when it's forced and when it doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing, though. If you're going to play diversity, it needs to be natural. In a natural setting where you have people of different races commingling, race just doesn't come up. It doesn't matter. It's not important. And if this school is supposed to be predominantly white, the issue of race just wouldn't come up. It's just people going about their business. Yet they made it a very big point from the very beginning that the two black girls, their biggest issue is that they're black. You know, we have Tabby, the movie buff, who is insufferable. And I'm a movie buff, but oh God, she gets on my nerves. You know, from the jump, she gets an assignment and she makes a remark that there are no directors of color on the list, and how she's going to have a movie screening of Jordan Peele movies, who's a black director. We get that from the very beginning. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's just like, oh, here we go. Like, oh my gosh, that's what this is about. It's just like, they kind of throw it out there to kind of put it in our face, and they don't really do anything with it. It doesn't serve any kind of purpose. It doesn't move with the story. It's just something that we need to know. And the thing is, like, you don't need to tell me. I should be able to just kind of pick that up naturally as you move the story along. It should be a part of her character, something that she's dealing with that I can just pick up naturally as she moves along. The fact that she has to come out and say it and make this announcement, not just to her teacher, but to the audience that's watching the show, tells me that whatever it is that's going on with her with respect to her skin color really has nothing to do with the story. And I could be wrong. We're only 3 episodes in, but it's really just to make a point to the audience and almost like to check off their box. You know, hey, we're going to talk about racism. We're going to talk about, you know, black representation in film, yada, yada, yada. And then we have the ballerina who gets the part of the Black Swan in the school ballet. And she beats out Mean Girl Karen, who's, you know, blonde, blue-eyed, white hair, one of the twins, and Karen makes a racist remark to her, and it's just kind of thrown in our face, and it's kind of pointless. We already got the gist from the very beginning that this girl is mean. It's like they're adding more fuel to that fire, but this character doesn't last long enough for that to even make a difference. I don't know. I hate forced diversity for the sake of diversity. I'd rather it kind of play naturally. And I see this a lot in other films as well when it comes to women in films. Like, I think that was one of my biggest issues with Captain Marvel with Brie Larson. And I love Brie Larson. I've been a fan of Brie Larson's for, God, years. She released an album when I was like 17 or 18 years old called Finally Out of PE. Like, I've been a fan of hers for a very long time. And my one issue with that movie is I felt like they were making a big point that she was female. Like, I am woman. I don't understand where Hollywood got the idea that this stuff resonates with people, because it doesn't. Especially when it comes to pushing things like, I am female, I am black, I am gay. Like, I should be able to pick this up naturally as the story goes along. And I think that's one of the things that the original Pretty Little Liars series did, is Emily was gay, but it wasn't thrown in our face. It was something that kind of evolved and developed with her character. As she was figuring out her own sexuality, we were kind of figuring it out with her. We were on this journey with her. It wasn't like, boom, I'm gay. Boom, here's a sign for a pride club. Boom, here's a sign about pronouns. And we'll get into that later. It's just not, there's no effortlessness. There's so much was thrown in our faces on that first episode, and just diversity dumping and information dumping. Like, who wrote this? Who wrote this episode? Who decided that I needed to know everything in the first 43 minutes? I'm just like, how are you going to progress the story when you've basically told me everything? But yeah, that was just my issue. I understand you want to show diversity, but if it doesn't make sense to the story, especially when you're trying to throw it in my face that they're diverse, it's just annoying. It just comes off as annoying. I don't know. When you're showing diversity in film, there is a certain level of believability that has to occur. But if you're going to make it nonsensical, then you need to write it all in such a way that as an audience member, I just accept it and move on. But I can't move on with this because they want to make sure from the very beginning that I get it. And they hammer it and hammer it and hammer it. And it's just frustrating. I mentioned in a recent TikTok that I am pretty desensitized, like very desensitized. Like, as far as movie and television is concerned, and even literature, nothing gets to me. Like, I can sit through anything. I can watch anything. Like, I don't get bothered. I don't feel this twist in my gut. Like, oh my God, this is gross. This is inappropriate. Like, I'm not that person. I'm very desensitized. However, I could not get through the first episode of Euphoria. Euphoria is a high school show, also on HBOMax. It stars Zendaya. I couldn't get through the first episode. I think I watched maybe half of it and I just couldn't take it. And I think it was because, you know, this is a high school show. These are supposed to be high schoolers. They're supposed to be children. Even though these are adults playing children, I'm supposed to believe as a viewer that these are children, and they're showing children doing drugs, taking off their clothes, topless. Like, it's just, I draw the line. And I just couldn't do it. But what I noticed in those first however many minutes of that show that I watched, the whole show revolved around Zendaya. Her character's name is Rue. Zendaya is an up-and-coming actress. She started on Disney Channel pretty much with the show Shake It Up. And then she had another TV show where the name of it literally just escaped me. Casey Undercover. She was in A Family of Spies. Cute little show. And that was her launch. Nobody launches stars like Disney. Disney knows how to launch their stars. Not all of them get a launch, but for the most part, they know how to launch their kids. And Zendaya has an amazing team behind her where she literally has this television show, which is her almost like a second launch. This is her vehicle. The entire show is wrapped around not just her character, but around Zendaya. That is the whole point of Euphoria, is to launch Zendaya, is to present her and push her, because she is at a point in her career where she is a moneymaker. And she's not quite box office draw like a Tom Cruise, but she's a moneymaker. And they pretty much created the show for her. That's all Euphoria is. It's basically for Zendaya. And that's what Original Sin is for Bailey Madison. Bailey Madison has been acting since she was itty bitty little. I think her first film may have been Bridge to Terabithia. Came out when I was in college. I remember going to the theater to watch it, and I boohoo cried by myself in the theater, like laid out across the seats of this rinky-dink, nasty smelling theater, crying like somebody killed my dog. Ugly. Like, that movie will tear you to pieces, and it's sudden. You don't see it coming. If you've never read the book, it's sudden. You don't expect it. You don't see it coming. There is no foreshadowing. There's no proper foreshadowing that can prepare you for what just tears you into pieces. And she's been acting ever since. I mean, you've probably seen her on many different things. She was in a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire called Brothers. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark with Katie Holmes. She was on Wizards of Waverly Place for a little while with Selena Gomez. She was in several episodes of Once Upon a Time, Good Witch. She's talented. She's incredibly talented. I am a huge fan of hers, and it's been such a joy to watch her grow into an actress. And she's a young woman of God, just good on her toes. She's just doing very well. But I can't help but notice watching this, the entire show really is centered around her. It's her story that opens up the entire thing, that really just launches the rest of the series. It's her. And it's not frustrating. I don't find it to be frustrating. I'm not upset that they've created a show basically for her to help kind of launch her to the next level. That doesn't bother me at all. You know what? Do what you got to do. Make that money, honey. I'm not mad at you at all. What gets me, if I'm comparing it to Euphoria, there's just the first few moments of Euphoria, is that a lot of those characters in Euphoria were very well-rounded. Just a few minutes that I watched of it. Even though everything is about Zendaya's character, everything revolves around her. She is the vehicle that is driving that show. Everyone around her has purpose. They're well-rounded. They're well-written, very defined. Whereas we're not seeing that in Original Sin, at least not yet. It's like she is a sculpture and everyone else is just a flat painting. There's no dimension in anyone else but Bailey Madison. And the thing is, her dimension isn't even consistent. What I noticed by the time we get to the second episode is just how lackluster the acting is in this show. It's very flat, very dry. It's inconsistent. You'll have moments where a character will have this moment of depth and then they're flat. Just kind of an example, you have Tabby, who is the movie buff, and that's all she is. She's a little shady. There is some shadiness going on with her, but the only personality she has is that she is a movie buff. You know, Farron is just cold and detached and very matter of fact. And there are no layers with her. And if there are moments of vulnerability, but it's like, it's inconsistent. It's almost like she has to flip a switch. I think of like Tinkerbell. That's what a lot of these side characters remind me of, is Tinkerbell, is that they're only capable of portraying one emotion at a time. I don't know about you, but, you know, I'm a woman. I am very capable of handling and portraying more than one emotion at a time. I feel like that's one of the hallmarks of being a woman, is that we are emotional creatures. And oftentimes we are feeling 1,000 different things at once, and it all shows on our face. There's none of that here. The only person that really gets that is Bailey Madison's character, where it's this, she has these roller coasters, the up and down emotions, but her character, I feel like, is just kind of poorly written. She's working very well with what she's given, and I'm hoping that as we go into more episodes, things shift and get better a little bit. I'm willing to give it the first season. Remember, I'm holding y'all to hold me accountable for that. Because here's what's going to happen is, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this on the podcast, but once the season is over, I'm coming back on the podcast and we're going to recap the whole thing. But she's so good at what she does. She's such a talented young lady because she knows how to work her face, her mouth, her body. She knows what she just knows how to work her whole body from her head to her toes. And you see that in this show, but it's just the acting sometimes is so forced. It's so static and staccato. Just, I don't know how else to explain it. That's something that really bothered me, is that the acting was very subpar and almost over exaggerated. Everything is tense for intensity's sake. There's nothing fluid about this. Um, it's just everything's so dark. I understand these are dark times they're living in, but like the reality is you're going through something dark, but you walk into school and it's bright everywhere. That's almost the contrast of it, is that you're going through something heavy and no one else seems to care. Whereas Bailey Madison, who's dealing not just with the fact that she's, I'm sorry, her character Imogen Adams is not only dealing with the fact that she's pregnant at 15, but her mother just killed herself. And now she is being framed and being blamed for something she didn't do. There's a lot of dark things going on in her life. And you mean to tell me that the entire school is dark? It's almost like the school has never heard of a light bulb. Everything is dark and everything is red. And I understand the red. That makes sense. That makes sense. The overall aesthetic of the television show, I'm loving it. I love dark contrast, and this has a lot of that, but it's almost too much. It matches perfectly with the mood of the characters, but oftentimes just a little bit of reality. There needs to be this tension between the mood of the set and the mood of the lighting and the mood of the characters to almost create this kind of dissonance in the audience, this tearing. So we can kind of feel what they're feeling. They're feeling like everything is dark inside, but why is everything still bright? Why is the earth still spinning? It's just, everything is just dark. And I think this is kind of the style of television right now, especially teenage television, because you have Riverdale, which I've seen that comment a lot. Hey, this is shot like Riverdale, which is on Netflix. And I think the CW too, but I've only ever seen it on Netflix. I don't have cable. It's kind of shot like Euphoria in that everything is just dark. But what just really bothered me the most was the fact that the acting is so subpar in our secondary characters, because even though this is centered around 5 girls, Bailey Madison is playing the main character and everyone else is supporting. Our supporting girls are very much flat. Bailey Madison is the only one showing any kind of depth, and it's just very inconsistent depth, yet this is obviously a vehicle for her. She deserves the best and more because she's that gifted, she's that grounded. I'm just not sure if this is the best vehicle for her. This last point kind of ties into what I said at the very beginning about diversity being kind of dumped on you and just pushed into your face, instead of letting the things that make the characters different just flow into the story. And I don't watch a whole lot of television right now. I just have streaming services and I just watch the same things over and over and over again. I'm pretty sure I've watched Criminal Minds all the way through at least 7 times. But some of y'all might know better than I do, especially if you have teenagers and the television shows they watch where a lot of woke things are just being thrown in our faces. And here is the deal. If these things were widely accepted and they were kind of culturally appropriate, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? If it was, I think widely accepted is just the word. If it was widely accepted and just kind of normal and natural and just went with the regular ebbs and flows of society, you wouldn't have to force it. You wouldn't have to make it a point. So, good God, we step into the high school and the first thing you see is pride stuff everywhere. And I have no issue with pride or, gay people in general or the LGBT, but I think even you have some people who are LGBT, particularly people who are LGB, who are a little sick of the community right now. And truth be told, tolerance and acceptance of the LGBT community is going in the opposite direction because everything is just so in our face right now. Everything seems so forced. So literally that's the first thing you see is LGBT everywhere, which is just not normal. In any normal high school you go into, you're not going to see pride stuff everywhere. You're just not. That's just not normal. You'll have, a poster for a pride club or artwork or something that done by an LGBT student that might show something LGBT related, but it's not going to be rainbow flags everywhere you go. Like, that's just not normal. And It's just very forced. It's unnatural. And I don't think it does anyone any favors. I don't know if I would call that accurate representation. It's forced representation. You're forcing us to see something that's just not necessary to the story. This is still a television show. This is still a story that has to be worked, that has to move. And there's no point in throwing it in our face or even showing it if it doesn't even go with the story. At this point, you're just trying to force a message on your audience, and that's either gonna help you or it's gonna hurt you in the long run. Because here's the thing, people are at a point right now where all these extra things that are not even sexual orientation related, but it's all gender identity, people are so sick of it. They're done, they're tired, because so much of it is forced because it's not accepted. I said what I said. So pronouns, even some of the slogans like trans women are women, trans men are men, it's not widely accepted, which is why it's being forced on people, and why you have people saying slogans like trans women are women. If people readily and easily believe that, you wouldn't have to say it. You wouldn't have to repeat it. You wouldn't have to chant it. There's a point where Imogen and Tabby kind of go to the corner and they stand directly in front of a pronouns poster. And it's not even like it's just part of the background. No, they make it a point that it's in between them and we clearly see the poster. It's product placement of the annoying kind. Oh, I understand this is a reality for a lot of high school students dealing with gender identity issues and sexuality, and just that's just normal high school. And we've had high school television shows over the years, many decades, approach these issues, but they've always approached it in a very honest and respectful way. Never pushed for acceptance. Just because something is not accepted doesn't mean it's seen as bad. Why are they trying to normalize something that people don't want normalized? The use of pronouns and whatnot. It's thrown in our face at the very beginning. And it's just annoying. It's just, makes me want to roll my eyes and just cut off the television like, oh Lord, here we go. We're going to get a lecture. That's what it is. It's a visual lecture. That's the phrase I'm like, it's a visual lecture. It's them trying to lecture us on a point they feel is important that really has nothing to do with the story. And then you have this character, Mouse, who might be LGBT. We know her parents are gay. And she, at one point, is kind of looking into going into the club. And then she meets this guy who's like, hey, I saw you looking at our posters. You should join our club. And that whole relationship there is confusing. I don't understand why they threw that at us in the first 2 episodes, because there was already too much going on in those first couple of episodes that adding that extra information that doesn't get fleshed out properly, it's just not helpful. But like I said, I am all for diversity in film and television, but I am only for diversity in film and television when it makes sense and when it's believable. The only exception would be something like Cinderella or maybe even Bridgerton, where even though it's nonsensical, they leave it up to me to accept it and move on. Whereas Original Sin is trying to force us to accept it. I don't know who they thought their target audience was going to be. The reboot is wholly unnecessary. It's not needed. The way the original series ended, they actually set it up for a spinoff, but they never followed through with it. I don't know why they just didn't pick up with the characters they introduced to us at the very end. They set it up for a spinoff. Instead, they decided to go with a reboot that no one asked for, that the fans were not, begging for. It's not like this big campaign. It's not like when I think it was Fox canceled Lucifer and fans were begging for a fourth season. So Netflix picked it up. It's not like that. It's not like, the show ended and we were begging for more. We were actually begging for answers. And instead of answers, we got a reboot that no one asked for. And at this point, really, the only people really interested in it are people who were fans of the original series. I don't know if they've gained or are going to gain anyone new. And I think it's all about reading the room. I think the problem with social media the last couple of years is that it's become a magnifying glass. It's making it seem like things that are so important on social media are actually important in real life. So things like gender identity, LGBT pronouns, which are so big online, they're trying to force this online world to exist in reality. And there's so much pushback and they don't understand. It's because most people don't live their lives online. They live their lives offline. And the truth is, offline, no one cares how you identify. Nobody cares about your pronouns. I don't think HBO and Warner Brothers read the room properly. But that's just my opinion. We shall see how the rest of the series goes, but I think pushing wokeness on us in the very first episode was a mistake. But we shall see. We shall see. What's up, y'all? Welcome back. I am really excited to talk about what I'm going to talk about today. You could probably hear it in my voice. Full disclaimer, you probably won't be all that interested, but I really wanted to talk about this in a longer form. So we're talking Pretty Little Liars today. So Pretty Little Liars is a TV show that came out in 2010. It ran from 2010 to 2017 based on a young adult series of the same name. And it was my favorite show. I watched this show religiously for 7 years. So invested. It ended horribly. The final episode of the series was the absolute worst. It couldn't have ended worse if they'd asked for worse. Like, it was just the worst way to tie it up. And there were still so many questions that didn't get answered. But I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to just binge watch and watch over and over and over again. Well, they have recently come out with a spin-off series. Now, they've tried 2 other spin-off series from Pretty Little Liars. They tried Ravenswood, they tried The Perfectionist. Neither of those lasted more than a season, and now they're trying again with Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. The difference between this new spin-off and the original series is that they're really not connected. Now, there's supposed to be some Easter eggs here and there, kind of bridging the two, but it's a completely different series, completely separate cast of characters, not connected at all. So it really is supposed to be, I guess, Pretty Little Liars for a new generation. That's more in line with the current wave of teenage television. Well, it premiered last night on HBOMax. They released the first 3 episodes of the series. I believe it's supposed to be 10 episodes in the season. And I binge watched them yesterday. And if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you saw kind of my initial thoughts on each episode. And I really wanted to expand and talk about it a little bit more. I encourage you to stick with me. I know a lot of y'all love to hear me talk about culture and politics, and I love talking about that stuff too, but this is where my passion is, film and television. So let's kind of get into it. Let's go. Oh, I'm about to geek out. I can't wait.